Welcome to another Unwinding with Fiber and Fabric. I know that in the last couple videos I have thought they would be shorter than they were, and then they turned out to be longer than I expected. But today we will be keeping it short, mainly because my camera battery is on the low side. I have a couple things I want to share. The first one is that we have had truly autumn-like weather. Some days have been cold and I've needed to turn on the pellet stove. Some days, like today, have been warm and I've been able to open up the window and let in some fresh air. The cats, of course, love when I open up the windows and let in the fresh air. It's wonderful this time of year. I love being in the sewing room. I've been in the sewing room quite a bit. I've finished up my Halloween projects just in the nick of time, and I have moved into not just the autumn projects but some Christmas projects as well. What I'll be sharing today though is just a couple little things. Of course, let's just go ahead and dive in and share with you the Halloween quilt that I've been working on. It was so much fun. A lot of the designs are applique designs from the embroidery company Kreative Kiwi. However, in this case, I needed some components for this quilt that I I just had to sit down and make myself. So there's a little sunbonnet Sioux witch, a small tree, some ground for to separate. When it came time to needing these components, rather than try to find someone to purchase something from, I just went to the computer and sat down and created it myself. Sometimes you just have to do that. It's one of the things when I first was able to get into machine embroidery, now, oh my goodness, 20 years ago. The goal I had was to actually learn how to digitize, and I did. I sat down and I taught myself how to digitize right from the very beginning. And a lot of my early, a lot of the stuff I made in the early years was actually stuff that I digitized myself. And I did buy some designs in those early years, and then later on I actually purchased some more. But I didn't really get into the whole buying someone else's designs quite as much as others did, and quite as much as I now do, until just recently, until these last couple years. Because while I certainly can digitize my own designs, I have to balance between, in the early years, I wanted to create my own designs because it was cost savings. That was one of the things I had to do. I had to cut the cost. And by having designs that I'd made myself, it minimized some of the cost of the hobby, the craft, I should say. Because I was certainly at that time not necessarily doing it as a hobby. It was to decorate my home. It was to enhance the clothing that I wore, that my children wore. And so digitizing was something I really felt I needed to know how to do in order to save myself some pennies. Now, though, I find, especially where there are so many more embroidery companies that you can find, you can now download them directly off the internet. Everything has changed in such a way that oftentimes it's not just simply easier to buy a design someone else has made. It is certainly at times much more artistic to purchase something someone else has made, especially when it leaves the world of simple embroidery and moves into real art. But also, it's sometimes a little better for my health. Sitting and working with a mouse, anybody who works with computers all the time, sitting and working with a mouse or even a pen or anything that you're doing that's graphic arts on the computer, it takes its toll. And for someone who develops overuse injuries very quickly, digitizing has become something that I have to be very careful about how much I do. So when I was doing this quilt, I needed components, and that meant going and making the components myself. And there was when the quilt came together, I will tell you, I was so pleased. The first layout that I had created with it, it left me a little bit wanting. And then I thought about it some more. I created the extra components, and all of a sudden, what I had seen in my head was now on the fabric. What I was after was not just simply throwing a bunch of designs on the quilt. I wanted it to convey that feeling of sitting in a pumpkin patch, or a little kid sitting in their room under their blanket reading a spooky story with a flashlight, and being surrounded by the safety and security of their home, or in this case, the pumpkin patch, but with a spooky story going on in the background. And so when the quilt came together and this layout came together, I was so pleased, because I think that's what it conveys. At least that's what it conveys to me. The whimsy, the fun, the joy of a young person as we approach Halloween, much like in Charlie Brown, where Linus is waiting for the great pumpkin, sitting and being excited for Halloween, but having that little bit of spook. And so it was one of the things that I think I for my ability, my sake, I feel like I was able to create. And it works for my entranceway. It works on the wall. It makes me feel like I'm ready for Halloween. We don't get a ton of visitors. We definitely are off the trick-or-treating path. But it's just such a joy for me to have this little corner decorated as I would want it if there were lots of little feet coming in and out of the house. And someday there may be little feet coming in through the house. But for now, it's for me. It's for that sense of joy that it gives me, that sense of joy that I get from thinking about being under the blankets reading a scary story. Not that I've ever been a fan of scary stories, but that imagination, the imagination, the creativity that comes when you're in a book. And that's what I was really excited. The little Sunbonnet Sue witch, she's at her cauldron. She is concocting some kind of wonderful brew. The haunted house with the ghosts is up on the corner, and down below in a pumpkin patch are some little critters enjoying a story. So that's the Halloween quilt I've been working on, and I was desperately trying to get finished and quilted in time for Halloween, and I made my goal. So moving on, I have started making a few more of the little gifts that I keep on hand for this season, for when the few opportunities I do have to entertain people in my home. It's always nice, I think, to have something on hand to lift the spirit. I've shared some of the things before. So this week I revisited little zipper bags. Now, I made bags of all different sizes and shapes back in the days of when my kids were little, before I had the embroidery machine, after I've had the embroidery machine. But I have to admit, I do kind of like a lot of the in the hoop embroidery, meaning all of the construction is done in an embroidery hoop. I do like the little in the hoop bags that you can make. Again, this all the embroidery machine does is change the way we construct it. Sometimes it speeds it up, but I think actually in these cases, I'm not sure it actually speeds up anything. Honestly, I think it removes the need to know how to construct because you have an instruction guide right next to you. In this case, a video that you can watch, and you can do it and the machine does it, and you get really nice edges to your seams. It's even better than if you traced a line on something and stitched along the line. And I think that's the thing I gravitate towards them for, is that precision takes a lot of energy. So when I can do something that I use less energy for precision, it's a win for me. But these are just wonderful little, some of them have keychains, little key fob things on them, but they're just little tissue, little bags to hold. This one has, whoops, they're all lined, but this one is just a plain lining. This one here, I lined it with the same fabric. But what I wanted to share about this, and it's for both the yellow one, actually all three of these. I have some old zippers that I ended up getting in, I think someone gave them to me. But you can pick up bundles of old zippers and such in bundle sales, in flea at your sometimes at thrift stores. This was a white zipper. This was a pink zipper. And this was a yellow zipper that wasn't the right yellow. I wanted a little more gold. So I'm going to zoom in here. And I'm going to zoom in here. And I'm going to zoom in here. The permanent markers that you can get. I use them to upcycle my stack of old zippers so that they could match more, they could coordinate better with the fabrics I was using. So that's something, that's one of the tips I wanted to give you this week, is that you can find a lot of these type of things at thrift stores. That's the British word, jumble sales, garage sales, estate sales. Sometimes you can buy them in lots, but you can get some old zippers and you can repurpose them by, in essence, coloring them. And the thing with permanent markers on the acrylic, these are the acrylic type zippers as opposed to the metal teeth. The acrylic takes the ink well. If you're working with the metal, if you wanted to play up a little bit more, the thing is there's some tips and tricks to working with metal zippers and cutting them so that they're smaller and stitching over them. And I am sure that is something that if you Google, you can find people who talk about those things. But what I was going to tell you is that I used just a permanent marker. However, you could also use acrylic paints as long as you were really careful and didn't get any of the paint in the teeth. So for the metal zippers, I would think maybe painting the edges, the fabric part, and you could actually paint them and then have it exposed on top instead of hiding in the bag. It can become the decorative element. So I just wanted to share that creative idea, little zippered bags. They call these tissue holders. However, I think they could be for a number of things, including other feminine products that I shall not name. But they're wonderful size. I think they would be really nice for some of the things that we now like to carry around with us. So that is my little project, something to have on hand. And a tip for this week is repurpose some of those zippers. For that matter, you can source zippers by taking them out of other clothing and upcycling them. But consider ink, permanent markers, or acrylic paints. So, promising to keep this a little on the shorter side and definitely making sure my battery doesn't die. and maybe even being able to squeeze in, I have a hair on my face, squeeze in a nap today. Let's go ahead and share my the English paper piecing block for this week. This one is, it's one of the names, and the name I choose to call it by is the North Star. And showing you the back. Now, as I said, I trim up all of the little dog ears on the back after I've pressed it, after I've finished the stitching. But this is a North Star, very simple, very lovely to do in high contrast colors, and certainly it could be a very lovely one for various holidays. So that's my English paper piecing block. It will be a link to its PDF will be in my in the description below. And I think I'm going to leave it at that and wish you a happy unwinding with fiber and fabric. And hopefully next week I'll have some more autumnal or seasonal fun. And maybe even some baking, because with the temperatures dropping finally, I feel I have more energy and I feel the need to get back in the kitchen and make some delightful, tasty treats. So, until next week, I wish you blessings and happy unwinding. Bye.